Chapter 1. My Apocalypse Can't Be This Cute. Day 923 of the Apocalypse. In City C, after nearly 3 years of governance, the government pulled several 100,000 citizens back from the brink of death in the crisis of the apocalypse. People began to work together, rebuilding their future life upon these ruins. Following the devastating ordeal of the apocalypse, the population of City C had a reduction of nearly 3/5. Those who survived were filled with immeasurable awe for life. Despite life still being incredibly hard, people's spirits were high. The hardest days had already passed, and as life gradually improved, Su Shu was devastated to realize she had been reborn. She was at a loss for words. Struggling to survive in the chaotic world and, by the way, amassing some assets, was it easy for her? She had it all planned out. As long as she could endure until the city was reconstructed, the things she'd saved would at least allow her to become a new rich beauty, wouldn't they? And from then on, she would be at the pinnacle of life. But now, after 3 years of painstakingly saving, it was all lost, back to square one. Su Shu felt discouraged. 3 days had already passed since she reborn, and there was less than 2 months before the catastrophe of the apocalypse would strike. She fell into deep thought. In 2 months, sudden mutations that drastically lowered temperatures and brought 3 days and nights of darkness spread fear across the globe, and no government or researcher in any country knew what was happening. The government of City C was no different, stunned by the abrupt changes. By the time they responded, small-scale chaos had already broken out in the surrounding areas of City C when law enforcement arrived. Some of it was already beyond control. After all, no one had experienced 3 consecutive days of darkness, and people were unsure whether the sun would ever rise again. Even the newscasters on TV didn't seem as composed and calm as before. In her previous life, at this time, she remembered she was rushing to finish her last article, intending to end her serial novel, and use the fee to travel to the Waterton in the south for a visit and to gather inspiration for her next story. But plans never keep up with changes. After the anomaly, City C, a northern city known for its mountains and waters, was hit by torrential rains that led to a once-in-decades flood. The already panic-stricken citizens had hardly recovered from the darkness before facing the disaster of the floods. The government of City C urgently requested disaster relief manpower and supplies from higher authorities. However, City C was not the only one. From top to bottom, the nation started facing unprecedented challenges on a national scale. Distant aid couldn't quench immediate thirst, and City C could only rely on itself. As Su Shu recalled carefully, fortunately, City C had a significantly sized border defense force that was able to help the government control local chaos, preventing it from descending into unimaginable human-made disasters like some other provinces did following the natural disasters. However, as someone reborn, especially for Su Shu, who had survived 3 years in those apocalyptic conditions, the hardest part was not the sudden weather drops, floods, or earthquakes caused by tectonic collisions. The hardest part was the ensuing food crisis after the string of disasters had wreaked havoc. The crops that had been sown in the fields were destroyed before the harvest. Later, people discovered that plants could no longer be cultivated on the existing land. That was when the severe crisis truly began. For Su Shu, who had struggled to escape from that crisis, just the mere thought of having to relive her past nightmare in 2 months robbed her of many nights' sleep. As it stood, no amount of thinking would change the situation. Since fate had given her a second chance, she had no choice but to face the challenges head-on. Thinking positively, if the apocalypse was indeed on schedule, at least she had the experience of surviving the previous apocalypse. With this thought, her mood improved significantly. Su Shu was by nature an upbeat and optimistic person. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to survive so staunchly in the tough environment of her previous life. It settled then. If reborn, she might as well start over, and moreover, this time, she not only had the memories of the last apocalypse but had also unexpectedly gained a mysterious space. Speaking of this space, Su Shu was still struggling to come to terms with the shock. She had always considered tales of this space, and that space, to be nothing more than fiction. Yet she never imagined that upon rebirth she would be so enlightened. Her space was in the form of a black jade ring she had picked up from the ruins in her previous life. She had liked the color of the jade, and to her surprise, the ring was still with her after rebirth. Especially when she discovered that the ring contained a space. The depression of having been knocked down from being a high-leveled veteran by fate finally subsided substantially. With 2 months to go until the apocalypse and a space in her possession, Su Shu felt much more confident. If the disaster was inevitable, then she needed to prepare early and avoid the desperate situation of her last life. Life in the apocalypse was simply not worth living. Having figured everything out while in that small house, Su Shu finally shook off the listlessness that had plagued her for days, looking bright and alert. In the quiet room, a phone ring suddenly broke the silence. Su Shu paused for a few seconds before realizing it was her cell phone ringing. Thinking back to her previous life when she hadn't used a phone for so long, the sound was quite nostalgic. Perhaps rebirth wasn't such a bad thing after all. At least for now, she could enjoy some things that would be gone after the apocalypse. And yes, most importantly, this time she had to stock up on supplies and food. She would reduce the hardships she had suffered in her former life as much as possible. Once a person changes their mindset, the transformation can be swift. Having accepted the reality of starting over, Su Shu answered the phone, her tone back to normal. "Hello, may I ask who's calling?" "Hello, is this Ms. Su Shu?" Su Shu was taken aback. "Yes, it is." Hearing her affirmative response, the person on the other end seemed relieved and quickly explained. "Ms. Su, hi, I am calling from the Songshan Welfare Institute in City B." The Welfare Institute. Before Su Shu could question further, the caller proceeded to state their purpose. "Here's the situation. A few days ago, we received a 5-year-old girl who had your contact information on her and claimed that you're her aunt. So, we are calling to ask if you would be able to make a trip to City B." Clutching the phone, Su Shu was baffled. When did she gain a niece? No, that didn't make any sense. She had been completely alone in her last life from beginning to end. Why was this apocalypse a bit different? With trepidation and confusion in tow, Su Shu picked up her niece, Zai, from the Songshan Welfare Institute in City B. She had never cared for such a small child before, and felt utterly at a loss as she opened the door, inviting the tiny, adorable child inside. 5-year-old Zai, less than the height of her legs, her hair braided into 2 Wi-Fi signal braids, carrying a small yellow duck backpack, hesitated before looking up at her, silently taking off her shoes and then obediently entering the house. Throughout it all, Zai didn't say a word. Before they had even begun living together, Su Shu already felt an enormous weight of pressure. After closing the door and taking off her own shoes, she took her bag inside. There were no slippers for children in the house, so Zai had to walk around in socks. Fortunately, the floor was wooden and the weather was still good, so walking on the floor wasn't too cold. All the way back from City B, she had been digesting the sudden fact that she had a relative. From shock to confusion, from confusion to acceptance, and from acceptance to delight, it took little effort for Su Shu to happily accept this suddenly emerged, sweet burden. For others, raising a child, especially one from a relative's family, might be troublesome, but for Su Shu, it was as if a huge pie had fallen from the sky, making her so happy. Since the death of her parents, she had been an orphan for many years. At this moment, looking at the little one sitting on the sofa, joy brimmed from the depths of her heart, an elation she could hardly conceal. Her happiness had come so unexpectedly that she was overwhelmed, and Zai's silence made her unsure of what to do now as the only guardian. Finally, Zaira, from today on, you and Auntie will live here together. Whatever you want, just tell Auntie, she said, placing her bag to the side and sitting cross-legged on the carpet in front of Zaira, their gazes aligning. She had heard that this height made it easier for a child to accept someone. Novice caregiver Su Shu was swift to assume her new role. Zaya had a pair of watery, clear, and bright big eyes, quite beautiful, with long eyelashes fluttering. It made one eager to hold her close and cherish her dearly. The moment she went to pick Zaya up, she was struck by the little one's upturned gaze that first moment, looking at her. The natural sense of closeness brought about by blood relationship made her take an instant liking to Zaya. But Su Shu sighed heavily in her heart, not knowing why Zaya refused to speak from start to finish. No matter what she asked, the child's expression seemed indifferent. Yet she distinctly saw a spark of liveliness in those beautiful big eyes. A 5-year-old cherub who was sparing with words. In the future, living under the same roof, how would the two of them communicate? As she pondered what topics could break the awkwardness between them, the little cherub suddenly took off her yellow duck backpack, bounced off the sofa, and barefoot began to look around the house. Su Shu watched her actions with surprise. Zaya, with her small braids bouncing, opened all the doors inside the house, not even skipping the bathroom, then marched around each room, circling from inside to out before coming back. Watching her, Su Shu had an odd feeling, almost believing that the 5-year-old Zaya, wandering around, looked like a little lion patrolling its territory. After completing her patrol, Zaya came back to stand in front of her. The 5-year-old child, about the same height as the seated Su Shu, locked eyes with her. Su Shu was puzzled, unsure of what the standing Zaya meant. Zaya blinked, and Su Shu nervously blinked back. Why was she so anxious? Supermarket. Su Shu pushed the shopping cart, in which sat a high-end mighty cutie pie of about 5 years old. She couldn't remember how, before coming to the supermarket, she had read from the girl's lively eyes that she was hungry. Anyway, she had now pushed the little girl around the snack aisle several times. Zaya, is there anything you'd like? Auntie will buy it for you, she pointed at the rows of snacks on the shelves. Zaya lifted her chubby little face and tilted her head as she seriously examined the items on the shelves, looking incredibly adorable in her meticulousness. Except she didn't speak. Su Shu. What else could she do? She had actually tried before to pick some snacks she thought were tasty and put them in the cart, but the next second, those items were crisply thrown out by the little girl. Thrown. Su Shu. After being rejected a few times, Su Shu finally realized that this little girl, though small in stature, had quite the temperament. Anything not to her liking was absolutely unacceptable. Su Shu suddenly remembered when she went to pick up Zai from the Songshan Welfare Institute. After staying with Zai for a while to get acquainted, she bent down to ask her if she wanted to go home with her. At that time, Zai, wearing her little yellow duck backpack, didn't say a word either, but she suddenly took a step closer to her. Confused, the director of the Songshan Welfare Institute was very pleased and said, "That means she agrees." Afterward, she completed the formalities and took Zai out. Looking at her now, choosing items from inside the cart, and recalling the tragic fate of those snacks thrown out earlier, Su Shu suddenly felt comforted. At least, Zaya hadn't rejected her like she had the snack packets. Oh well, if she's aloof, she's aloof. If she doesn't speak, then so be it. She's all the family I have, little as she may be, but as long as Zai is healthy, that's stronger than anything. Thinking this way, her mood began to lift. If Zai doesn't like what she picks, then let her choose herself. As long as it's her choice, I might as well buy more. If we can't finish, I'll just store it in the space for later when the apocalypse comes, to satisfy Zai's cravings. Anyway, she needed to start planning to gather supplies. Oddly enough, the planning was starting with a little girl's snacks. Sushu. Why does she feel it's indescribably cute? In a past life, the apocalypse was tough. A packet of cookies could cause a brawl, and many children died of hunger. Their mothers, in despair, held their deceased children and wailed in agony. Each time she witnessed that, she felt as if her heart was being pricked by needles. Sometimes, she would be moved to give some of her hard-found food to those children. But the apocalypse was harsh, and her help was often just a drop in the bucket. Sometimes her actions didn't just fail to help others, but also brought trouble upon herself because of the little food she had. In her previous life, she had hit countless walls and suffered many losses before becoming who she was today. She wouldn't casually offer her kindness again, nor would she easily give in to any person or setback any longer. Hardship accelerates growth. Reborn, she had prepared herself for a prolonged, tough battle. Yet she hadn't expected that Zai's arrival would be like the flapping of a butterfly's wings, bringing changes she had never anticipated. As she was lost in thought, a little hand suddenly lifted in front of her, pointing in a direction on the shelf. Sushu turned to look, quite surprised. In Sushu's past impression, children, especially kids as small as Zai, generally loved sweets. It was rare for a baby to be willing to eat something sour, and the direction Zai was pointing to made even her feel sourness in her cheeks just glancing at it. Zai, those plums are very sour. Are you sure you want those? Zai's hand stayed fixed on pointing towards the sour plums, unwilling to lower it. Sushu walked up, took a bag, still somewhat hesitant. Are you sure? Zai nodded her head, her attitude resolute. Looking down at the item in her hand, she wondered, could children really eat this? Just as Sushu hesitated, a deep, magnetic voice suddenly rang out behind her, like a bass cannon, resonating in her ears. She might want the toy that comes with it. Sushu was startled and turned around. Behind her stood a tall man clad in quality casual wear, handsome with distinct features. Despite his short hair, his outstanding looks couldn't be concealed, especially with the smile at the corner of his mouth. His erect posture there made him effortlessly the focus of everyone's attention. A natural-born leader's aura, Sushu hadn't expected him to appear so suddenly in her line of sight, and for a moment she stood there frozen. The familiar face abruptly pulled her memory back to the previous life's apocalypse. The familiar face before her had provided her much warmth in such chaotic times, had been seriously injured while protecting her, and she had no way to repay him. She had once considered offering herself to him, but he refused. She still remembered his words then. He had said, "Sushu, we're not suitable." After that, she never broached the subject again, only trying to repay him in whatever ways she could. From the beginning to the end, he never explained why they were not suitable, and she had wanted to ask him, if they were not suitable, why did he treat her so well? If they were not suitable, why did he strongly oppose when others proposed to her? All the answers she wanted to know from her previous life were forever sealed underground from the day he sacrificed himself. Sushu hadn't expected that, at this moment, the person she thought she would never see again was standing alive in front of her. Unexpectedly, her throat choked up, and her nose felt sour. She suddenly felt grateful to the heavens for letting her be reborn once more. Tang Zelen, with his hands in his pockets, stood there in a relaxed manner. He had only made a small remark, so why did the young girl in front of him seem so struck, her eyes turning red all at once? The heart of Senior Colonel Tang was collapsing. He shouldn't be scary enough to frighten a young lady, right? Thinking back on what he had just said, he was even more puzzled. He had simply mentioned that her daughter might want the little dinosaur toy that came with the extra purchase. There was nothing wrong with that, right? Facing the barrage of enemy fire had never made Tang Zelen flinch, but facing a strange woman's reddening eyes, he felt unusually embarrassed for once. If he had known, he would have kept his mouth shut. The other party's discomfort abruptly snapped Su Shu out of it, and she suddenly realized that she had lost her composure. The current Tang Zelen didn't recognize her yet, and he had no relationship with her. Her behaving this way might scare someone. She turned her back to hide the mistiness in her eyes, put on a more normal-looking face, then turned back and bowed her head to say, "Thank you." This thank you was deeply emotional and meaningful, carrying the gratitude from her past life and the surprise from meeting him again in this one. Tang Zelen heard it, and inexplicably his heart skipped a beat. The voice of the girl was really pleasant to hear. On the stove, the simmering soup hissed and sputtered, filling the two-bedroom, one-living-room apartment with a delicious aroma. Wearing an apron, Sasha stood in front of the kitchen counter chopping vegetables. Her kitchen was open-plan, and she could see Zaa sitting on the living room carpet, performing a silent play with Little Dinosaur. Tang Zelen was right. Zaa picked the pickled plums just for the toy that came with them. As soon as she entered the door, she lured away her Little Dinosaur, and as always, tossed the snack bag she looked down onto her. Sasha sighed. Just after chopping the cucumber, she looked up at Zaa, warmth swelling in her heart. Why did such a small figure make her feel that her usually cold and empty apartment was now filled with warmth? Since she was 13, when her parents both died in a car accident, she'd been left with just this apartment. She studied, worked, and lived here alone, eating alone, sleeping alone. It had always been just her. In front of others, she never easily revealed her inner loneliness, but when she returned home, loneliness would hit her like a wave, truly making her feel sorrow from the bottom of her heart. Through the steam of the kitchen, she watched Zaa playing, and she suddenly understood why, in her previous life, she was so crazily fond of that person, even after being abandoned, refusing to let go. She was so stubborn that she would not turn back even if she hit a wall. Had it not been for meeting Tang Zelen later, she might have thrown her whole life away into that wild love nurtured during her youth. Because she feared loneliness. Because she too yearned to have someone she could worry about and care for, just like everybody else. Unexpectedly, after being reborn, a sister she had never known in her life left Zaa to her. Maybe heaven had heard her wish and fulfilled it. The regret was that the half-sister she had never met had already left this world. How wonderful it would have been if she were still here. She, her sister, and Zaa living together as a family. Even if the apocalypse arrived, it wouldn't matter. She was confident that this time she could protect her loved ones. Zaa seemed very absorbed in her play, and the corner of her lips curled into a slight smile. Half an hour later, they finished dinner. Zaa sat on the sofa watching cartoons, and not even an hour later, she was so sleepy that she fell asleep, her soft little body collapsing into Sasha's arms, melting her heart. After placing Zaa in the bedroom, she tiptoed out, closed the door gently, then returned to her own room and opened her notebook. She recorded solemnly in her planner, 59 days until the apocalypse. Since being reborn, she hadn't looked into the current economic situation. All she remembered from her previous life was that she was working on a book at this time. She had already checked. The book was nearing its end. After years of apocalypse, she had long forgotten what the original ending was, but she had a vague outline in mind. Now, pressed for time, she didn't have the luxury to write anew. She planned to pull a few all-nighters in the coming days, and finish the ending based on her memory from her previous life. Her first plan, finish the serial novel. With her job sorted, the next issue was how to truly prepare for life after the apocalypse. In her previous life, she had no space, so she had to scavenger most of the supplies bit by bit. Sometimes she traded with others for what she needed. Although she survived the cannibalistic apocalypse, looking back on that way of life was unbearable. Even though she had Tang Zulun's assistance, and her life was much better than many others, a chaotic world remains chaotic, a far cry from the current life filled with abundant resources and peacefulness. Before, she was lonely. One person satisfied would mean the whole household wouldn't starve, and if there was no food, enduring the hunger might just see her through. Now it was different. She had Zala, and she didn't want Zala to suffer like other children. Thinking it through, she solemnly added to her notebook. Second, start preparing supplies from tomorrow. After writing, she reviewed it carefully twice, closed the notebook, and went to bed. Before turning off the light, she made a silent vow. In this life, she would spare no effort in protecting the ones she loved, and she would never again show a shred of soft-heartedness to those who treated her like trash, who loathed her to the bone, as she had in her previous life. To those who treated her kindly, she would repay them 100-fold in this life. To those who deceived and insulted her, she would pay them back eye for eye, tooth for tooth. It took her 3 whole days, and besides cooking and taking care of Zala, Sasha spent an average of 15 hours a day writing. Finally, she completed the conclusion of the novel. While writing the postscript, she pondered for a long time. She didn't know whether to hint to her readers in the book that the apocalypse was coming, and to suggest they collect some supplies in advance just in case. However, during such peaceful and prosperous times, who would believe one person's ramblings? She feared that even if she left a hint, it would be like a stone cast into the sea, silent and without impact, not really helping anyone. Sasha was no saintess. Even with the apocalypse approaching, she did not possess the grand sentiment of saving all sentient beings, but having written for many years, she had a group of readers who always supported her. They had sincerely encouraged her during her lows and congratulated her during her successes. Over the years, they had become another kind of family to her. Separated by the screen, she couldn't see what each of them looked like, but she knew that each heart supporting her was fervently warm. Disaster was looming, and while the book could end, the companionship and support they had for each other over the years were not so easy to say goodbye to. What should she do? She was lost in thought, completely unaware that the door had been pushed open by a cute child. Dressed in a pink bunny pajama Sasha had bought for her, Zala stood at the doorway holding her new friend, Little Dinosaur, gazing at her contemplative Aunt Sasha. Her eyes were as clear as a mountain spring, bright as the stars. She looked at Sasha for a while, then quietly closed the door and left the room. Her aunt was working, she knew it. She glanced up at the living room clock, thought for a moment, then went back to her room, put on her coat, shouldered her little yellow duck backpack, took her companion Little Dinosaur with her, quietly unlocked the door using a stool, and left the house alone. And all this went unnoticed by Sasha, who was working inside the room, thinking Zaa was still asleep. After much thought, Sasha felt that a mere mention might not be effective. What if she wrote a survival novel about the apocalypse? She wondered if that would work. A story is always easier to remember than a mere mention, right? She thought that even if many people took the coming of the apocalypse lightly, if they could finish the novel and understand even a little about how to cope with the impending disaster, it would still be good. It would be like a subtle reminder to her little angels to take good care of themselves. After much deliberation, Sasha felt that this method would help more people and wouldn't expose her. Even if someone questioned it later on, she could argue that literary creativity is boundlessly imaginative, and with so many apocalypse narratives out there, anything could happen. There shouldn't be a problem. Retracting 10,000 steps, Even if there were problems, Sasha, could handle it. That settled it. Sasha made up her mind. Just a few days ago, she had planned to retire after finishing this book, but for her little angels, she decided to start another one. Only she, who specialized in writing ultra-sweet, dramatic romance, was suddenly transitioning to writing a brutal survival apocalypse novel. How would she explain this to her dear editor? She looked at the schedule. There were 56 days left until the apocalypse. There was something more critical to do, which was to gather supplies as much as possible. Even if she wanted to write, this book couldn't possibly be written in millions of words like her previous serials. Usually, in her best condition, she could write 1,500 to 2,000 words per hour. If she wrote about the apocalypse, something she was familiar with, assuming 2,000 words, writing 1 hour a day, in 50 days, she should finish 100,000 words. 100,000 words for a survival apocalypse novel would be both a test of her writing skills and her little angels. She wondered if they, who were used to lavish million-word novels, could accept this bare-bones 100,000-word novel. 5 minutes later, she knocked on her editor's chat window. Time circled back to where it all began. She hadn't expected that she could relive the little sweet moments of her working times, and after thinking about it, she switched to a familiar tone. "Every day, Sushu. My lord, are you there? Your servant has urgent military intelligence to report." "Commander Chestnut, my little cutie, what's made you so anxious and impatient?" Sushu's face felt hot even across the screen. "Every day, Sushu. The old story's finished and I want to start a new book." Commander Chestnut, manually making a heart shape. "I love your striking like lightning diligence. What's the theme of the new story? Time travel or a big CEO? How about we write a drama this year where a cold, aloof beauty gets toppled and is lovingly spoiled in all kinds of ways?" "Every day, Sushu. None of those." Commander Chestnut. "Every day, Sushu. I want to write an apocalypse survival," pitifully blinking. Commander Chestnut. "Baby, is there something troubling you recently? A good CEO story that rakes in cash you won't write, but the apocalypse you do. Do you find money biting your hand? Don't give it to me then." On this side of the screen, Sushu felt embarrassed. When had she ever thought money bit her hand? She now wished more than anything for money, so she could buy more things to stock up. "Every day, Sushu. No, I just read a few apocalypse-themed books recently, felt super inspired, and wanted to write a short story to satisfy that urge." Commander Chestnut. "Impulse is the devil." "Every day, Sushu. I know. The old book tired me out after a year, so I just wanted to write a short one to take a break. Is that okay?" Pitifully blinking. Commander Chestnut. "All right then, how long do you plan to make it?" "Every day, Sushu. 100,000 words should be fine." Commander Chestnut. Glaring. "How can you put it on the shelves with just 100,000 words?" "Every day, Sushu. Then let's not put it on the shelves. How about I just use it as practice to gain experience?" Pitifully poking fingers. Commander Chestnut. "Young friend Sushu, did you take your medication before you hit me up today?" "Every day, Sushu." Hesitant. "No." Commander Chestnut. "Go back and take your medicine." After logging off, her imposing Commander Chestnut softened for a moment and granted her the pass token. The book, it could be written. Sushu thought that probably Chestnut believed in out of sight, out of mind. Since there was no new long story, he was letting her write a short one to satisfy her feelings. To be honest, Sushu was grateful from the bottom of her heart. She nearly blurted out impulsively, "The apocalypse is coming, editor. You'd better stock up now." But fortunately, she held back because if she hadn't, Commander Chestnut would definitely have made her take her medicine several more times. She tried to hold back but couldn't, and ended up sending one more message. I heard from others that prices might go up after a while. Should we stock up while it's cheap? After some thought, she felt that wasn't enough and added another line. Oh, right, the urgent military intelligence I mentioned is this. Signing off with her hands covering her head as if shielding from a pan lid, Su Shu felt that she really was speechless. How could she have given such an idiotic hint? She wondered if Chestnut got the hint between the lines. If he really didn't get it, then never mind. She'd come up with another plan later. With the old book finished and the new one not yet started, Su Shu felt a wave of relief. With work problems solved, next up was the issue of gathering resources. In the past few years of writing, besides daily expenses and other costs, she had also saved up a considerable amount of money. Although not as much as others, she calculated that the cash in her hand and fixed deposits in the bank combined amounted to over 700,000. That was money she had saved up on her own. In the bank, there was also a large sum from her parents' life insurance, including compensation, which totaled more than 2 million. She had never touched it over the years, but this time she could withdraw it all and convert it to supplies to store in her space. All in all, she had nearly 3 million in cash at her disposal, but she had no idea how many goods she could get with it. Looking around her, if that wasn't enough, she still had this house she could sell for money. The house was old and she had renovated it after earning from her job. In truth, it wouldn't sell for much. Plus, this house carried many of her memories and the thought of selling it did make her somewhat reluctant. Let's just wait and see, she thought. As she was contemplating whether to sell the house or not, suddenly, she noticed something off in the room. By this time of the evening, Zaya would usually be awake already. Su Shu got up and went to the next room, not expecting that as soon as she pushed the door open, her heart almost stopped. Where was Zaya? Zaya's sudden disappearance threw Su Shu's thoughts into disarray, and she dashed downstairs with all her speed. In the residential area, she grabbed anyone she could to ask, "Have you seen a 5-year-old girl?" It was already night, and how could anyone in the residential area pay attention to such a small child? In her panic, Su Shu staggered into the police station to report the case. The officer on duty asked for detailed descriptions of the missing child, recorded every detail, and an older police officer brought Su Shu a cup of water, comforting her with the words, "Take a sip and calm down. Don't worry, we'll do our best to help you search." Think carefully, before the child disappeared today, did she do anything out of the ordinary? Su Shu looked up blankly. Out of the ordinary? Yes, any specific behavior. Think about it, you see, the child wasn't lost outside. According to what you said, she should have been sleeping, but then you found she was already gone, which means the child left the house on her own initiative. Could there be any reasons that made her want to run away? The police officer tried to analyze. Clearly, the officer's words poked at a hidden nerve of unease in Su Shu, causing her face to turn deathly pale instantly. "No, that's not possible," she repeated. The middle-aged police officer said, "Relax, take your time to think. Any detail you can remember might increase the chances of finding the child." "Okay." Su Shu tried to recall carefully. She described how she brought Zai home from the welfare institution in B City and what their days had been like together since, even including the details of how Zai disliked certain snacks when they went to the supermarket, all the while nervously wringing her hands. The two officers on duty couldn't help but sigh as they watched her sit there anxiously. Such a young girl with no experience, tasked with care for a child who suffered from psychological wounds and refused to speak. It was indeed asking too much of her. After some consideration, given the lack of additional useful information from the reporter, they decided to look around nearby, setting a range based on the walking distance of a 5-year-old and starting their search, hoping to find her as soon as possible. After some moments of restless panic, Su Shu gradually calmed down. Why did Zai suddenly leave without saying a word? Before leaving, she noticed a stool placed next to the foyer. She suspected Zai must have stood on it to open the door. Why didn't she come to find her upon waking up or drink any milk, but instead, out of character, she left the house? Su Shu couldn't come up with any reason for Zai's departure. Did she no longer want to live with her, or could it be that Zai didn't like her aunt? The thought that Zai might have run away because she didn't like her own aunt pierced Su Shu's heart with a pang of pain. At night, the city's neon lights flickered, and the street lamps had long been lit. Su Shu ran through every familiar yet strange intersection nearby, anxiously and worryingly searching for a glimpse of Zai. Crazy thoughts ran rampant in her head. Zai, just where have you run off to? With every second passing, Su Shu had never felt time move so slowly or be so tormenting. She didn't know how long she searched, her anxious tears dried by the wind time and again, until finally, beneath a tree outside of a residential area, she saw a small, elongated shadow illuminated by a street light. Across the wide asphalt road, Su Shu could clearly hear her own heartbeat like a drum falling to the ground. Zaya, standing under the tree, she looked down with a trembling voice at the little person. There was her Zaya, still wearing the pink bunny pajamas. Wasn't she cold in the chilly night? Su Shu hastily wrapped her own coat around Zaya and then embraced her tightly, as if afraid of losing her again. Zaya didn't speak or struggle, just allowed herself to be held obediently. You scared your aunt to death, do you know? I've been looking for you for so long, afraid something happened to you, she said, her voice trembling, clinging to speaking as a way to contain her inner excitement. After a while, she looked up at Zaya. Zaya, your aunt wants to ask you, do you hate me? Zaya, with big, watery eyes, stared at her, blinked, then shook her head. All the worry in Su Shu's heart dissipated. It was okay as long as she didn't hate her, as long as she didn't. Then next time, if you want to go out for a stroll, can you tell your aunt first? I'll take you out, she said. Zai nodded. Su Shu breathed a sigh of relief, bent over to pick Zai up with the intention of calling a taxi to go home. But just as she was about to raise her hand, a familiar voice suddenly sounded from behind her. Su Shu, the other person sounded uncertain. The voice seemed to come from the depths of a distant memory. Embracing Zai, Su Shu turned around blankly, and a face she knew all too well appeared before her eyes. Shen Han. Surprised, Su Shu could not fathom why he was here. In the darkness of the night, only the street lamps emitted their residual cold light. Shen Han stood in front of Su Shu, his expression of surprise lasting only a moment before it quietly faded away. His gaze shifted from the familiar face of the girl to the little girl in her arms, a flicker of surprise crossing his eyes, but he suppressed it without a trace. Why are you here? His tone carried a hint of confusion and an inexplicable sense of joy. Su Shu wanted to explain that she was just looking for her niece and had not expected to see her ex-boyfriend here. But before she could speak, a sharp and delicate voice from behind Shen Han interrupted her, swallowing all the words she had intended to say. Shen Han, I'm so hungry. Can you make me a steak when we get home? Oh, is that, Su Shu? The woman's voice suddenly rose in pitch, sounding quite surprised and faintly a bit smug. Heh, Jiang Meili, the one person she never wished to see again in her life. Su Shu's eyes darkened, and she hugged Zai tighter to herself, not responding, and turned to hail a taxi on the side of the road. A large hand clasped her slender wrist. Su Shu, I have a car, where are you heading? I'll take you, said Shen Han. Su Shu pulled her wrist from his grasp and coldly continued to hail a taxi. No need, President Shen. Her tone was harsh and cold. Shen Han frowned. What was she saying? When had he become the President Shen in her mouth? He had just come back from abroad yesterday and had been settling things at home. He had planned to look for her in the next couple of days, but had not expected to encounter his girl here. However, what puzzled Shen Han was the seemingly inexplicable estrangement the girl in front of him had towards his approach. In the darkness, the man's black eyes quietly darkened. Jiang Meili stood by Shen Han in high heels, the panic in her eyes flashing momentarily before she rushed forward, asking with a chirpy voice, "Su Shu, long time no see, I'm Meili. You're not pretending not to recognize me, are you? We're old classmates after all." As she spoke, her gaze swept over the little girl in Su Shu's arms. She said enthusiastically, "Wow, that's so thoughtless of you, classmate Su Shu. You got married and had children without even telling us you're old classmates." Her words were a veiled reminder to the man beside her. The girl you liked has already moved on, married and had children after you went abroad. Did you really think she was waiting for you? Upon hearing this, Su Shu coldly turned her head to glance at the self-satisfied Jiang Meili. Her icy gaze, filled with disdainful condescension, infuriated Jiang Meili on the spot. What a joke! Just an orphan with nothing but a pretty face dares to give her attitude. How naive! Jiang Meili sneered internally. Su Shu's silence seemed to affirm Jiang Meili's speculation. The expression on Shen Han's face darkened in an instant. He pursed his thin lips tightly, grasped Su Shu's wrist, which was struggling to break free more firmly, and waved away the taxi that had just stopped in front of them. He took out his phone from his pocket. "Bring my car to the front gate." "Shen Han, are you going to take Su Shu and her daughter home?" Jiang Meili asked with a smile, deliberately emphasizing their status as mother and daughter. The more Shen Han listened, the darker his expression became, and the tighter his grasp on Su Shu's wrist. In Su Shu's arms, Zai quietly leaned her small head against Su Shu's neck. Without saying a word, she comforted her with subtle movements, as though even the little girl could sense what was in her heart, making Su Shu feel that there was still a sliver of warmth protecting her heart in this cold night. "Let go." In the quiet night, Su Shu suddenly spoke out coldly. Shen Han frowned and said in a deep voice, "Stop it, I'm taking you home." He deliberately avoided mentioning anything related to the child in her arms. He didn't want to discuss any topics he didn't want to hear right now. The girl in her arms, he would talk to her about it separately. And there was something he simply couldn't accept. The girl who had once loved him so deeply now seemed so distant, as if he were a person of no importance to her. "Let go," Su Shu suddenly shouted in a low voice. In her past life, she had had enough of loving Shen Han without self-respect. Couldn't she just keep her distance from him in this life? Shen Han was a stubborn and domineering man, and he always persisted to the very end on anything he wished to do. From her past life to this one, Su Shu had never been his match, let alone now when she had Zai in her arms. Shen Han's obstinacy persisted until he finally stopped at the foot of her apartment building. After she entered the house, Su Shu let out a long breath, relieved to have finally shaken off Shen Han. She was extremely thankful for the police officers who happened to be downstairs, as without them, she feared he would have disregarded her objections and forced his way up. When Shen Han had no choice but to leave, his face was terribly dark with displeasure. Now that Zai was safely back, no matter what, she felt at ease. Glancing at the wall clock, it was already very late. Worried that Zai might be hungry, she first warmed a cup of milk for her before turning to the kitchen to make dinner. With work done, she would go out to buy things tomorrow, but what about Zai? After tonight's disappearance incident, she really dared not let Zai out of her sight. Before long, 2 dishes and a soup were ready. She waved over to Zai, who was holding her dinosaur toy, and the little one climbed onto the stool to eat by herself. As she ate, watching Zai bow her head to her meal, Su Shu, not having thought of a better solution, decided to take Zai out with her for now. She had only thought about the child's physical safety, but she hadn't considered that at such a young age, It was important for Zai to go out and see more of the world, to interact with more people. Maybe it could even help with her reticence to speak. Having come to a decision, she tried to explain to Zai. Zai, starting tomorrow, your aunt will need to go out for some errands. How about we take a walk, okay? Zai, who was eating, looked up at her. It'll be just like when we went to the supermarket. We'll visit a few places and buy some very useful things for our life later on. But Auntie doesn't feel safe leaving you at home alone, so I want to bring you along. But once we are out, you can't run around silently like you did today. No matter where we go, you must tell your aunt first, okay? She didn't know if Zai could understand her long explanation. The little girl's eyes blinked several times, and she seemed to seriously consider Su Shu's proposition. Watching this, Su Shu couldn't help but find it incredibly cute. Not long after, Zai solemnly nodded her head. Su Shu extended her pinky. Shall we make a pinky promise? A small, adorable little finger hooked around Su Shu's. Ah, her heart, how it melted at this. Children eat slowly. In her previous life, Su Shu had developed the habit of eating quickly to survive. Hesitation meant joining the ranks of those who starved to death. During that time before Tang Zelen appeared, she struggled alone to survive, pushing herself to the brink of exhaustion. The stomach pains that tortured her later from back then almost took her life several times. Yet even so, she felt proud of herself for being one of that 2/5 of the population of Sea City that had managed to survive. Taking her notebook, she sat at the dinner table with Zai, making a list of things to purchase while they ate. As for tonight's unexpected encounter with Shen Han, being reborn once more, that man was no longer someone who could affect her emotions. There were many things much more important than Shen Han. In the face of an apocalypse, natural disasters and human-made catastrophes were inevitable. When the time came, she could take Zai to some safe places to hide. The most worrying part was the upcoming food crisis. She needed to save at least half of her money to exchange for all kinds of food to store in her space. And then there were medicines, weapons, clothing. As she was writing, she suddenly glanced at Zai, and a strange thought flashed through her mind. In her previous life, didn't Shen Han return to the country a week before the apocalypse struck? 55 days until the apocalypse. Su Shu withdrew all her savings from the bank, her pockets full of cash, and drove Zai for a shopping trip. Sitting in the back seat, Zai gazed out of the window for the entire journey, her round eyes blinking continuously, filled with curiosity about the world. Occasionally, seeing her look like that through the rearview mirror, Su Shu would sigh silently in her heart. It was the age to start understanding the world, but instead, she was about to face the arrival of a cruel apocalypse, which was heartbreaking. Before bringing Zai back, the director of Songshan Welfare Institute mentioned that when Zai was brought in addition to being nonverbal, she seemed very curious about everything around her. The director said in an implied way, suspecting that Zai had lived in a confined space for some time. This was said in a very subtle way, short of directly accusing her never-met sister of child abuse. In her heart, Su Shu also harbored doubts about Zai's reluctance to speak, but based on her observations over the past few days, there was no trace on Zai's body or spirit of having been abused. Her curiosity about everything seemed to be innate. Those eyes, no matter what they looked at, were always sparkling. But she just wouldn't speak. She couldn't really do anything about this issue, and could only hope that their relationship would slowly improve over time. Now, with time so pressing, even if she wanted to take Zai to see a psychologist, there wasn't enough time, not to mention that Zai didn't seem to have any serious psychological disorders. If she had curiosity about the world she lived in, then Su Shu thought she should take her out more before the apocalypse, to let her enjoy and try as much as possible. Knowing what was in her heart, Sushu looked at the traffic lights ahead and suddenly smiled. The feeling of having a family member was truly wonderful. The feeling of being able to take care of a family member was truly wonderful. After taking Zai to the supermarket last time, she found that the little girl really enjoyed sitting in the shopping cart and picking out items. Therefore, without a second thought, she headed straight for the largest supermarket in the city center. The large supermarket was divided into 2 floors, with daily necessities and food on the upper floor, and fresh produce, fruits, vegetables, and grains on the lower floor. Returning to the supermarket, Zai seemed very happy, her chubby little face flushed with excitement. Indeed, coming here was the right choice. To stockpile supplies for the apocalypse, one definitely couldn't buy in bulk from the supermarket. Sushu hadn't planned on mass purchasing from the supermarket. She had her own methods. However, since she had a cute child at home, driving around made her think that many items available now might become scarce once the apocalypse arrived. So she decided to let Zai pick out her favorites first, and then she would select some items that would be hard to buy or find later. The things that Zai liked, that could be bought from the supermarket and wouldn't raise suspicion due to large quantities, she would buy more and take home. Since she had driven there today, even if she bought more, it would be fine. As for those items that couldn't be bought in large quantities for the time being, she would order them online later in the evening. In short, she wanted to stockpile as much as possible for whatever Zai liked. The primary reason for her visit this time was to check on baby formula. Zai was still growing, and baby formula was the best nutrition for children. It wasn't wrong to be prepared. And so Zai, sitting in the shopping cart, happily chose products from aisle after aisle, while Sushu noticed that whenever the little girl really wanted something, she would glance at her with intention, as if observing whether she would agree or not. Sushu laughed. "Little girl, you're quite sharp for someone who doesn't speak much. Don't worry, your aunt has money. Whatever you want to eat, whatever you want to have, pick whatever you like, your aunt will buy it for you." After strolling around the upper floors when it came time to check out, her overflowing shopping basket still managed to attract many curious looks. Some found it amusing, thinking it odd that someone would buy so many snacks for a child out of season, believing the parent was really spoiling the child. They couldn't help but give her an extra glance or two, and whenever their gazes met Sushu's, they would smile politely. Sushu usually responded with a polite smile of her own. However, not everyone shared this view. Waiting in line is already a test of patience for the average person. Some have more patience, some are slightly more irritable. Already annoyed by waiting, upon seeing the mountainous purchases in Sushu's cart and not knowing when their turn would come, they couldn't help but make sarcastic comments. The stomachs of children today are so weak, nothing like how robust we were in our day, especially since it's a little girl. All children have sweet tooths and want everything, but parents shouldn't indulge them like this. Snacks are no good, all sugar and fried foods, how can eating so much of that be healthy? After speaking, they even sighed and concluded, "These young parents today know how to have kids but not how to raise them. Children aren't pets, you can't just spoil them like that, right?" Not content with just their own thoughts, they even tried to involve the elderly lady standing in line next to them. The woman standing behind her, although she also disapproved of Sushu buying so many snacks for her child, upheld the principle of not meddling in others' affairs and quietly waited in line. Unexpectedly, she was suddenly dragged into the trouble, much to her dismay, and she pursed her lips without joining in the previous speaker's complaints. An old woman like her wouldn't interfere in young people's business, but you, neither young nor old wife, why are you so troublesome? Speaking of our time, who shares your time? I was born during the war against Japan. Meeting a cold shoulder, the young woman glanced unhappily at the old lady before turning back to stare at the cart of goods that seemed to take forever to check out. "Mommy, I want to eat that too." Suddenly, the son standing next to the woman pointed at a set of nut gift boxes in the cashier's hand and expressed his longing. Eat, eat, eat. Eat your farts. That stuff is dirty and ridiculously expensive. What's it gonna do, make you smarter or taller? Always wanting to eat crap, why don't you focus on studying? Try to get me a few more points on your tests. She wasn't satisfied with just words and even twisted the boy's ear a couple of times. This made many people around frown slightly. The woman murmured behind them, not too loudly or softly. If it were someone else, they might have turned around and snapped back at her. Not only did the people around covertly watch Su Shu's reaction, but even the cashier scanning items was sneaking glances at her. As for Su Shu, she remained completely unruffled, like nothing was happening. Ignoring the noise behind her, her expression calm as she took out the items from her basket one by one. Occasionally she would ask Zaira, "Do you want this too?" Zaira's attention seemed to be drawn by the woman behind them, tilting her head slightly and gazing back with shining eyes. After mocking for a while and seeing no reaction from the concerned party, the woman turned around and met Zaira's gaze, and for some reason, she suddenly flared up in anger. A little kid dared look at her with that kind of eyes, huh? What are you looking at? The junk foods made you stupid, she snapped coldly. Ignoring her, the child dared to look down on her too. What nerve! Buying so much, not afraid of stuffing yourself to death. Just when everyone thought Su Shu was too meek to tangle with the shrewish woman, a bag of potato chips smacked the woman's face with a smack, loud enough to quiet everyone within a few meters. The cashier holding the barcode scanner froze too. Should they still ring her up? The woman was hit in the face and was stunned for 3 seconds before she reacted. "I'm going to kill you." Ah. Before the obscenities could escape her lips, her cheek was met with a harsh slap, and her whole body staggered several steps to the side. She hadn't expected that the seemingly frail girl would strike with a force stronger than a man's, stronger than when her own man raised his hand. So all her anger and fear were unleashed by Su Shu in that moment. Under the watchful eyes of the public, and unwilling to back down against a young girl, suddenly, Su Shu, standing there radiating an aura of coldness, inexplicably struck her with fear. Su Shu said, "Considering you have a child with you, I feared it would negatively affect him. I have been extremely patient with you. Yet you continue to create a scene, not even sparing a 5-year-old child from your tirade, spewing whatever comes to your mouth. Is fighting with people really what you enjoy? Fine, have it your way. What are you, daring to hit me? I will kill you, let you see who's tough." The woman, crazed, leaped up from the ground and charged over, completely ignoring her child beside her who was terrified and screaming. A shrew before the apocalypse, Su Shu had not encountered many people like this, as she mostly spent her time either writing or shopping in malls, and would avoid such encounters whenever possible with her past personality. After the apocalypse arrived, people who disregarded decency to selfishly trouble others were everywhere, and sometimes she couldn't avoid them. In times of severe resource scarcity, when survival itself was a question, the darker aspects of human nature unabashedly played out across the land. For trivial issues like this, Su Shu had already experienced countless times. Later, she adopted the principle of not offending if she was not offended. She was no longer the meek bunny of the pre-apocalypse days. She lost her temper when that woman spoke of Zaira and finally exploded. Telling her off was one thing, she could keep the peace but insult Zaira. At the police station, Su Shu held Zaira, covering her ears, quietly sitting on one side, listening to the officer's lecture. Conversely, the woman was crying and wailing, struggling with the officers, ranting about how ill-mannered Su Shu was, how violently she had hit her, the resentment so intense she wished the police would handcuff Su Shu on the spot. The middle-aged officer's surname was Yang. Officer Yang, holding his teacup, appeared somewhat helpless. The young girl before him looked to be about 20, seemingly gentle and quiet, yet beneath that docile facade lay a fiery temper. The woman's reddened cheek claimed to have been struck by a slap. Tusk, if indeed this girl had done it, she certainly didn't lack strength. One night she was out looking for her niece, the next, she was assaulting someone. Who knew what might happen tomorrow? Seeing her attitude was not bad, Officer Yang, who she had previously acquainted herself with, frowned slightly less sternly. "Do you realize what you did wrong?" Su Shu said, "I know." "Officer Yang, where did you go wrong?" Su Shu, "I shouldn't have resorted to physical violence in public." Officer Yang, "What, as if it's acceptable to get physical in private?" He coughed twice, glanced at the troublesome woman, then back at the calm and educated girl, his expression softening. "Young lady, try not to be so hot-tempered, huh? Wouldn't it be better if everyone just got along?" Su Shu nodded. "Okay, I'll listen to you." "There, that's a better attitude." Thanks to the officer's mediation, the unwilling woman finally stopped yelling. She turned to Su Shu with a sneer. "Want to settle this? Fine, I'm not unreasonable. You started it, right? If you want me not to pursue this further, all right. Pay me 5,000 for my emotional distress, and I'll give you a chance to redeem yourself." As she spoke, everyone at the station's faces turned dark. Su Shu glanced at Officer Yang holding his teacup, her eyes questioning. "Can I hit her to make her more brain-damaged?" Officer Yang averted his gaze indifferently. Su Shu sneered, about to turn away, but her eyes then caught the always silent and embarrassed boy standing in the corner, his nervous and awkward expression and blushing cheeks. Su Shu's mind buzzed, and she swallowed all the words she was about to say. After a moment of reflection, she reversed her previous attitude and agreed. "All right, it was I who acted first. That was wrong." After speaking, she glanced unintentionally again at the boy's face. His tension seemed much relieved. "Forget it, it's just 5,000. She could afford it." Officer Yang squinted at Su Shu, clearly perceiving that her attitude had just shifted. Glancing once more at the distant boy, he seemed to understand something, and his curiosity about Su Shu piqued. She was an interesting girl, indeed young, yet she often exuded a sense of maturity that didn't fit her age. 5,000 yuan. Su Shu didn't give it to the woman but walked over to the boy, knelt on one knee, took the little boy's hand and placed the money in his palm. "Keep this money, Auntie was wrong, and she shouldn't have hit someone," she said. The little boy was stunned and fearfully pushed the money back to Su Shu. "No, I don't want it. It's my mom who's wrong." Su Shu sighed inwardly, thinking the child was so much stronger than his mother, placed the money back in the boy's hand, smiled, turned around and picked up Zai. Behind her, the boy still tried to return the money to her, but the 5,000 yuan in his hand was snatched away by his mother, who snorted arrogantly through her nostrils, pretending to be the good guy, "Huh? It was your fault to begin with. Giving compensation is getting off cheap." After that, she poked her son hard with her finger and scolded, "This is mine. What are you returning for?" The boy shrank back, following the woman out of the police station with his head lowered. Before leaving, he glanced back at Su Shu, with the woman berating him harshly as he hurried to catch up with her. 5,000 yuan for a slap. Sympathy for Su Shu filled the room, while others shook their heads and sighed, questioning what kind of a mother would behave like that. Officer Yang still held his teacup, pensively watching Su Shu leave with Zai in her arms. "Uncle Yang, what are you looking at so intently?" A tall young man entered, pushing the door open. "Watching a girl get swindled out of 5,000 yuan." Upon seeing the newcomer, Yang Shusheng frowned involuntarily and turned to pour water, finally taking a break. "And you don't go home to see your old man, always running to me. What's that about?" Zelen's disregard was met with amusement as he followed Yang Shusheng into the office, smiling. Yang Shusheng put down his teacup and said, "All right, out with it. Whenever you show up, I know there's no good news." "How can that be, Uncle Yang? You're joking." "Oh, does it have to mean I have an issue to come to see you? Can't I just miss you and want to check in?" Zelen replied, laughing. Cut the crap. Did he not know this rascal was sly from head to toe? In front of an old fox, there's no point in showing off. So Zelen took a big stride over and sat down on the chair opposite Yang Shusheng's desk, ready to reveal his purpose. "Uncle Yang, the team is going to go through intensive training soon, and I might need to lead them into the mountains," he stated. Yang Shusheng heard this and furrowed his brows. "What's up, border troubles?" "Not really. There's a bit of unrest, but it's nothing serious. Mainly, the tri-service exercise isn't too far off, and the higher-ups want to train this batch of soldiers. It's a good opportunity to prepare for combat readiness well in advance," Zelen said earnestly. "So you've come to me because—" Yang Shusheng looked at him with a smile. "Could you put in a good word for me with my dad? You know how stubborn he can be, and only you can manage him. You're his former commandant. He wouldn't dare refute you, right? Enough with buttering me up. I know my own weight. No need for your flattery." "So, does that mean you agree?" "Agree my foot." Yang Shusheng glared at him. "Speak the truth." Zelen sighed, revealing a broad grin. "All right, no beating around the bush with someone who can see through me. I really need your help, Uncle. Without you, I'd be without options, completely stuck." "Let's hear it," Yang Shusheng said, picking up his teacup, ready to listen clearly. "My dad wants me to go home for a blind date so I can give him a grandson." Yang Shusheng spat out his tea. Zelen sat upright in his chair, his handsome and spirited face shining with sincerity. "I'm telling the truth." Yang Shusheng pulled out a piece of paper to wipe the tea from the corner of his mouth, digesting the news he had just heard, then looked up at Tang Zelen with a puzzled gaze. "If I remember correctly, you're not exactly of a ripe old age this year, right? A young man in the prime of his life should be building a career, not chasing love. Doesn't that delay your future prospects?" "That's exactly the point I've been making to my dad, but he just won't listen." Yang Shusheng clicked his tongue disdainfully and added, "That said, marrying first and then making a career is also reasonable. After all, you're not getting any younger. Spending all day in a monk's temple, where are you going to find a wife? I think old Tang's idea isn't bad. Since you still have a few days before rejoining the ranks, it's a good thing to solve personal problems in the meantime." "Uncle Yang, don't play the victim with me. You've got more tricks up your sleeve than anyone. There's nothing you can't handle. You're just looking for a shield because you find your dad too whiny, aren't you?" Yang Shusheng grunted without mincing words. "It's really not like that." "Oh, is there a hidden story?" Tang Zelen said, "My old man is quite stubborn, as you know, but it's never been as bad as this time. A while back, when I was still in the military, the old man went to Mount Wuding with some friends. Who knows which valley he met some able person. The guy tells my father that I'm not long for this world. Uncle Yang, if this charlatan stood in front of me, let's see if he'd dare repeat those words. But as you also know, during last year's operation abroad to capture troublemakers, I almost lost my life. The old man was stupefied when he heard and thought about how he's fought his whole life, and all he's got left, aside from injuries, is me, his only child. He became restless and easily got manipulated by that charlatan." Yang Shusheng laughed. "How exactly did he get swindled? Do share for a good laugh." Tang Zelen said, "All right. That person told my dad, 'Don't think the world is at peace now and prospering. It's more like the calm before the storm. Disasters are imminent, yet everyone is living in a dream, only thinking about enjoying the present without a care for tomorrow's pile of bones.'" Sounds partially reasonable. Then what? "That's what my father thought too." The guy then goes on to say, "Your son's name is already on the pile of bones. If no influential person helps, he'll probably be unable to escape his fate. Just see how bothersome that is, Tang Zelen said. Annoying indeed. Did old Tang believe that? At this point, Tang Zelen sighed helplessly. If he didn't believe it, would he have faked illness so my superiors would let me take leave? I had a ton of things to deal with back there, and my superiors were all but kicking me out. As soon as I get home, there's nothing wrong, and he's hell-bent on getting me to go on blind dates. Just this morning I had 3, and with a dizzy head I came straight to you, uncle. On my mother's behalf, could you please persuade my old man to stop his madness? Hold on, let me get this straight. Yang Shusheng thought for a moment, then asked, so that man talks about a looming calamity, then says you can't escape it unless some noble person helps, and next thing, old Tang is sending you on blind dates. Figures. Did he think you'd find a life-saving noble through matchmaking? Who knows what's going through old Tang's head? A man who's weathered many storms yet believes this stuff. If not for his using my redeployment as a threat, I wouldn't even dream of those blind dates. Uncle, please, convince him, make him stop this insanity. Tang Zelen came asking for help, truly at his wit's end. Old Tang's stubbornness was legendary. He respected few and was disgruntled with many, save for the former squad leader Yang Shusheng, who had once risked his life for him. If Yang Shusheng could speak up, there was a good chance old Tang would cut Zelen some slack. Let me think about it. You know, despite old Tang's tough exterior, he's been both father and mother to you. It wasn't easy raising you, and then you go off risking your life. Which father wouldn't worry? Let's not talk about calamities for the moment. Honestly, if you managed to find a wife and have a couple of kids through the matchmaking, that wouldn't be so bad either. You should try to understand him, Yang Shusheng said sensibly, and Tang Zelen nodded in understanding. All right. Once I finish this mountain training, I'll definitely find a good daughter-in-law for old Tang. I promise to make him a grandfather within 3 years. Add some joy for both of you elders. Yang Shusheng's eyes widened as he half laughed, half scolded, Buzz off, you rascal. Such nonsense, who would believe that? As Tang Zelen was leaving, he earnestly repeated his plea, Uncle Yang, whether or not I can get assigned to this mountain training depends on your help. The supermarket mishap was just an episode, and once it passed, Su Shu didn't dwell on it and purchased what was needed. In the back of the car, she loaded up everything she had chosen, along with the items selected by Sci-Fi, and brought them all home. Once home, she sorted everything into different categories and took her laptop to the living room coffee table. Next to her, Sci-Fi was engrossed in video games as she ordered items one by one online. Among all the items, Sci-Fi's snacks appeared numerous, but in reality they accounted for only a quarter of the total. Most were food items she had picked herself, especially canned goods with a long shelf life and storage capability. She carefully selected many varieties, taking a box of each. As for the milk powder she needed, originally, she only considered Sci-Fi's needs. However, as she shopped, she noticed other mothers selecting various types of milk powder and baby foods. It occurred to her that such items would be difficult to produce in the future, so it might be wise to stock up more, potentially for future use. Thus, from upstairs to downstairs, she chose between 50 and 60 different types of items, selecting up to 2 boxes of each, nearly 1 per item. On the online shopping page, there were numerous products available, including some that couldn't be found in the local market. Su Shu directly ordered such items by the case online, while for those available locally, she made a separate list, planning to visit the farmer's market the next day. Initially, her plan was to order everything online, but she later realized that this was too risky. Suddenly storing such a large quantity of goods and leaving a record online could potentially cause problems in the future. So, after some thought, she decided it was safer to directly purchase from the farmer's market, or if she had enough time, perhaps even buy directly from the countryside, though she was unsure about the feasibility. Su Shu was very methodical in her approach. She categorized all items into three groups: those that could be purchased online, those that could be bought locally, and those she planned to explore in the countryside when she had time. After an hour, she had placed all orders for the items that could be bought online, and in a few days, she would just have to wait for their delivery. The list for the market was also handwritten and ready. She planned to go there first thing the next morning. As for the countryside, she would put that aside for now. Zaya, tired from playing, crawled up on the sofa and fell asleep. Having finished her tasks, Su Shu stretched lazily and turned to look at the sleeping Zaya with a gentle gaze. Even if the apocalypse arrived, she would strive to prevent Zaya and herself from enduring hardships. In the online orders, 1/3 consisted of various types of instant noodles, along with some military rations. She had looked up reviews for military rations online and selected the three best-rated types, initially ordering 10 cases of each. As for the instant noodles, she typically ate flavors like braised or spicy, and she initially ordered 10 cases of each. Other flavors, added together, amounted to about 4 or 5 cases. The first batch of long shelf-life items was ordered in such quantities. Su Shu planned to buy small quantities, but more frequently. There were also some spices and food items that were difficult to find locally, along with Japanese general goods, all of which she managed to secure online. All the items were prepared with the necessities for survival in the apocalypse in mind. In times of frequent disasters and calamities, many items become crucial, such as consumables that cannot be produced. The more they are used, the less remains, so she planned to stock more of these. However, items that could potentially be bartered later on were not stocked as heavily. She had checked her storage space. Aside from the bedroom where she slept, the two storage rooms next door were each only about 60 square meters and not very large. She figured one for storing food and the other for self-defense and tools. As for the medium-sized yard, she wanted to buy some seeds and plant fresh vegetables there. The small pond on the left side of the house, she planned to go to the countryside to find someone selling fish fry, buy some to raise, and get some poultry. The space, once cleaned up, should be able to hold supplies for a few years. Then there were clothes and medicines, also very important items. It was necessary to prepare early for moisture-resistant and warm materials. Clothes were easy to obtain from stores and online shopping, but for medicines, buying too many might attract attention from some regulatory agencies. She put several question marks on the medicine item, leaving it for further research later to see if there were any good solutions. That same evening after dinner, once Zaya had gone to bed, Su Shu began to write her new novel, Apocalypse Survival Diary. As soon as she published the first chapter, the readers' group exploded. "Woolly Sue, why aren't you writing cute, sweet Mary Sue stories anymore? Author, please show your face. Old man here, I've calculated that there's something going on with Sue. Rolling my face on the keyboard, baby doesn't listen. Baby doesn't listen, baby wants candy. Huh? Hey, you above, what's with the huh?" At the one above, Sue's new book, Apocalypse Diary, mentioned Round Mountain. Could it be that Sue is from Sea City? Yeah. The chat in the group was lively, focusing not so much on Su Shu's new novel, Apocalypse Survival Diary, as on whether or not Su Shu was actually from Sea City. As the discussion continued, 3 or 4 readers from Sea City emerged, doing a technical analysis summary on whether the Round Mountain mentioned in the beginning of her novel was indeed their hometown's Round Mountain. After comparing the city status described in the beginning and the specific location and simple descriptions of Round Mountain, they felt the accuracy was about 80%. After updating her novel, Su Shu went to the bathroom to take a shower. When she returned, wiping her hair and checking the 99+ messages, she was stunned. Her beloved little angels were like gods. Just from her short 5,000-word description, someone had managed to pinpoint that the location described was likely near the Rao Mountain area in East City. Su Shu. Only the word admiration could express her feelings. The phone lay on the bed, suddenly ringing. Su Shu turned around, reached for the phone, and saw an unfamiliar number. She hesitated for a second before swiping to answer. "Hello, may I ask who's speaking?" There was no sound from the other end. Su Shu asked again, thinking to hang up if there was no response. Just as she was about to disconnect, she finally heard the other party's voice. "Su Shu." Su Shu frowned, recognizing the voice on the phone. She knew who it was. "Yeah, what's up?" Shen Han stood in the hotel suite on the 27th floor, looking over the city's nightscape, including the dark river in the distance, his dark eyes mysterious in the night. The voice on the phone, so familiar, yet Shen Han did not know what was wrong with Su Shu. Before his return, even though they were separated by oceans, whenever the girl spoke to him, her voice was nervous and excited, and that was just half a month ago. But why, since his return to the country, had her attitude done a 180 degrees turn? Su Shu had changed so quickly that he wondered if the woman he saw that day was really the one who had spent countless difficult nights with him during a tough autumn semester. And that girl in her arms. After returning that day, Shen Han had a sleepless night, the image of Su Shu carefully holding the child haunting him. So careful, as if treasuring a gem, wasn't that sense of being cherished supposed to belong to him? 5 years ago, he had crossed the ocean, and they had reluctantly broken up. But after the breakup, neither sought others, and neither mentioned the past. She had silently accompanied him through countless difficult nights. He had become accustomed to her gentle companionship, and even more used to being dominant in her world. But in less than a month, while he was busy with work transitions and returning to the country, they hadn't spoken once. Could she just turn her back on him without a word? The voice on the phone sounded very strange, especially grating to Shen Han. After a moment of silence, he spoke, "Su Shu, I want to see you." Su Shu clutched the phone, a rush of emotions flooding her. Suddenly, she remembered a previous life, when she stood shocked at Shen Han's lavish wedding venue, and what he had said then. Shen Han had said, "Su Shu, thank you for coming to my wedding." At that time, Su Shu's heart felt cold. The man who always said, "Su Shu, I want to see you," had become someone else's groom upon his return. Time had passed, and after her rebirth, she could still hear him say, "Su Shu, I want to see you." Su Shu laughed, replying coolly, "I'm not free, I'm busy." He never expected that one day he would actually hear these two words, "I'm busy," from her mouth. In the darkness of the night, Shen Han stood by the window and laughed. It was a feeling he couldn't describe at the moment, as if something that had been placed in the room suddenly grew legs one day and ran out on its own. That feeling was extremely unpleasant. Shen Han's eyes darkened, and he irritably tugged at his tie, heading to the bathroom for a shower. He needed some time to cool down, to really think about what kind of pills Su Shu had taken to treat him like this after just a short month. The girl who had always been chasing after him, telling him, "Shen Han, I like you," now seemed to live only in his memory. That day in her eyes, he saw a kind of gaze that was very alien to him. Alien. The hot water poured over his hair, and Shen Han's eyes suddenly opened amidst the steam. Yes, it was alien. Su Shu's gaze seemed to be looking at him from a very distant place, no longer the excitement she could not hide in the past, and Shen Han furrowed his brows. He did not like this feeling. After hanging up the phone, Su Shu went next door to check on Zai's sleep and cover her with the blanket before leaving the room. Having hung up on Shen Han and refused his request, she knew Shen Han well, a man with inborn arrogance. Treating him that way, he would certainly not let it go. Su Shu gave a wry smile, deciding to put this matter out of her mind. What could he do if he didn't let her off? At worst, she would suffer a bit, but the apocalypse was coming. She wasn't afraid of him. She worried instead that by that time he would be overwhelmed himself. She felt the issue with Shen Han wasn't serious, so she didn't take it to heart and went to wash up before bed. Early the next morning, she took Zai with her, drove the car, and headed to the grain and oil market. Carrying Zai, Su Shu moved through the market. Zai's little arms clung tightly around her, but her eyes were busily looking around, which Su Shu found amusing. They say the eyes are the windows to the soul, and with such lively eyes as Zai's, how could she possibly have the serious psychological issues that the orphanage director spoke of? Su Shu felt that Zai's silence must be due to her thoughts. She wondered if it was due to something inherently good in her family, or a sense of trust brought about by their blood connection. Su Shu always thought Zaya was very smart, because she had seen many times that Zaya was very inventive when playing games at home, creating a variety of fun from the toys Su Shu bought for her. Watching from the side, Su Shu herself found it fascinating. She could never have come up with that. From this, she believed that although Zai didn't speak, she was definitely not a foolish child. Early in the morning, the farmer's market was filled with various scents floating through the chilly air. The morning was damp and cold, so she dressed extra warmly today and carried Zai straight to the grain section first. In the morning, the shops were almost all dealing with wholesale customers. Someone like Su Shu, carrying a child, was left to stroll freely as the owners and workers didn't go out of their way to serve her. After all, the big deals mattered more. It didn't bother Su Shu. Carrying Zai, she moved deeper into the market, stepping aside for the incoming customers now and then, asking prices as she walked. Almost a full circle through, she had a rough understanding of both the wholesale and retail prices of all the grains, silently calculating how much she would need. With the 3 million in hand, if she went by what she had experienced in her previous life, she and her little Zai could stockpile around 1 million's worth of grain and make it through the apocalypse with plenty to spare. She even felt that some would be left to trade with others or to get things done. But afterwards, as Su Shu watched the events she had experienced after her rebirth, she felt uncertain. In this life, too many things were different from before, such as having a child by her side and meeting Tang Zelen and Shen Han earlier. Even the novel she had serialized before the apocalypse to prompt readers to prepare had all made her feel subtly uneasy due to the differences from her previous life. On a larger scale, whether it was changes in the weather or national and city policies and activities, they were no different from her previous life. But the dissatisfaction with the small details had already begun to show some changes. Su Shu was a bit worried. She wondered if, after the apocalypse, it would be like the last life, whether she and Zai would be in danger, whether they would have enough food. People fear thinking too much, and once Su Shu started to overthink, she planned to allocate 2/3 of her budget to stockpiling grains. She thought more is always better than less. In the hellish days of the apocalypse, who would complain about having too much food? With a plan in her mind, she became much more stable in her actions. She didn't have abundant money, but to prepare more thoroughly, she also needed to spend carefully, comparing as she went along until she set her sights on one store. Although the grains were good in every store, she was drawn to this store's grains for their plump kernels and smooth, sleek appearance. Touching a handful and rolling it in her hand, she felt the desire to buy it. However, the price was a bit more expensive per caddy than at other stores. Early in the morning, the business at every store was booming. This store was no exception, only it was not as bustling as the others. The store owner sat by the doorway on a chair, sipping a small drink while watching others prosper, occasionally glancing at Su Shu and her daughter in her arms picking out grains, finding it amusing. Miss, it's my first time seeing someone bring a child to buy grains early in the morning. Su Shu looked up, pointed at the rice in front of her. Is it cheaper? The owner was straightforward. How cheap do you want it? If you buy just a little, it's this price. I can give a discount on a bigger quantity, but let me put it straight, see those people. If you want their prices from my shop, I can't do it. If I could, I wouldn't be sitting here drinking to ease my boredom this early. Su Shu nodded. All right, I won't push it down to that price, but your prices really aren't cheap. The owner, previously indifferent, scrutinized Su Shu more closely and realized this girl really seemed to want to buy his grains, and it looked like she might buy a lot. His entire demeanor brightened, and he eagerly came forward, no longer drinking his liquor. Miss, how much would you like to buy? Su Shu looked around, comparing the rice on the left and the right. It was obvious to anyone, the rice on the left was more expensive, and the rice on the right probably had a similar price to that of other stores. After thinking, she pointed to the left, the clearly more refined and expensive rice. This depends on how reasonable the price you offer is. She then pointed to the right. This rice seems of similar quality to others, a wholesale price same as theirs is fine. Start with 1,000 kilograms for me. Of course, if you can make the price more reasonable here, I can save some money and buy more of this. Su Shu smiled, gesturing again to the finer rice on the left. The owner, an experienced merchant, understood immediately. Securing an order of 1,000 kilograms of grain, which was only from the ordinary rice on the left. Having seen her standing by the finer rice for a long time, he quickly calculated the deal in his mind. Smiling, he asked, besides grains, is there anything else you need, miss? Su Shu looked up and instantly grasped his intent, smiled back. If it's convenient for you, I'll take a look at other things here too to save the hassle. Ouch, the boss is happy, he said repeatedly. What's the issue of convenience or not? I can give you a fair price for these grains and groceries. If you're sincere in buying, what's there to say? I run an open shop with absolutely fair prices. The shop owner cheerfully picked up his little account book to jot down the sale of 1,000 kilograms of goods, and warmly invited Su Shu in, making room for a young errand boy who had just returned from delivery to pour her a cup of hot tea in a paper cup. Come on, have some tea. It's cold early in the morning and it's only a paper cup, don't mind. As Su Shu sipped the hot tea and specially reheated milk brought over, she looked at the shop owner's chubby face and keen eyes, voicing the question that was in her heart. Boss, I see that you also sell the same polished rice as other stores, so why is this so much more expensive? With such good stuff sitting here, how can the rice on that side sell? She asked, pointing to the right. It wasn't that the rice on that side was bad, she had looked closely, and its quality was similar to the good rice from other shops, and the price was also comparable. But it's always like that. If you place a good product on its own, it stands out. However, if you place it next to an even better one, the difference becomes evident. A comparison renders the lesser one unable to discount their price, and the better one becomes too expensive, leaving people hesitating to buy. On hearing this, the boss let out a bitter laugh. You're pretty observant, little girl, to notice such things. I won't hide the truth from you. My little shop used to do quite well, but ever since this lake rice started selling here, I'd say business has dropped by almost half, if not more. You see, the rice is good, but sadly, there's no market for it. Su Shu, sipping her hot tea, looked at the so-called lake rice and disagreed. Economic conditions have improved now, people have money. Fake rice is mixed into the market and the common folks can't tell them apart. If your lake rice is good, why not target the high-end market? Then you'd have a market. Not so easy, the boss said truthfully. You could wander around this whole market, and if you can find rice like mine, I'd give it to you. To target the high-end market, you need scale and distribution channels. This lake rice comes from my mother-in-law's village, nestled by mountains and water. In the past, the villagers grew crops just to feed the family for a year. You get that kind on the right. Selling it just about scrapes together enough for food and drink for the year, and there's no hope for more. The village isn't wealthy either. Su Shu listened with interest. The boss probably didn't have much business early in the morning, plus a pretty young lady sitting across from him, with an even smaller and cuter one in her arms, so he felt inclined to chat. When I went down to the countryside, there was an accident near that village. If it weren't for my wife, I would have lost my life there. After we got married, my wife came to the city to help manage the business. Over the years, we've accumulated some assets, but since the villagers from my wife's village started planting this lake rice a few years ago, my business has. Sigh. The boss sighed deeply, the look on his face speaking volumes. What happened? That village is by the mountains and the water, right? I heard, they say that one night, amidst thunder and lightning, a huge bolt struck down and woke up everyone in the whole village. The next morning when they got up, they discovered a spring had suddenly appeared in the mountain behind Lake Village. Those who drank it said the water was especially sweet. We haven't tasted it, so how would we know, right? He said. Sushu. The boss continued. After that, some knowledgeable folks in the village. You know, in those rural places, there are always a few peculiar characters within 100 miles. I know, just that kind of person. Then out of nowhere, this guy shows up with a compass and spends some time in the mountains. He comes out and says the mountain spring is God's gift to their village. If they want to get rich, they should use that spring water for farming. The food grown with it would definitely sell at a high price, and eventually their whole village would prosper because of the rice. Maybe it would even spare them from disasters. Can you believe that nonsense? But there's no helping it, they believed him. Then they found out I have a distribution point in the city. My wife grew up eating the village's communal rice and wanted to repay that kindness, so she took on the job. Even you would hesitate at the price. Other people just ask and leave. The price was set by them, and we can't change it. We've been putting our own money into it for the past 2 years, just as a way of paying them back indirectly. But if we keep going like this, I suspect I'll end up investing all my wealth into it. What do you think of that? Sushu. How was she supposed to respond to that? The boss took a sip of his drink and suddenly asked, Miss, are you really planning to buy or not? Sushu, embarrassed, wasn't she here to buy, or had she come to listen to his stories instead? She nodded slightly. It does seem quite appealing. That meant she was considering buying it. The boss said, how about we do this? I'll be honest with you about the rice price. It truly isn't negotiable. But seeing as you're buying so much from me, I'll give you a couple of pounds. Try cooking it at home and see how it tastes. If you like it, come back for more. If you think it's no different from regular polished rice, then don't waste your money. After saying this, he personally weighed out a few pounds for her and placed them beside her. Sushu thought to herself, businessmen surely know their tricks. He had effectively blocked her every possible argument. In his mind, a girl buying 1,000 kilograms must have given him hope. She thought about the previous years when she made sales at a loss. Perhaps this year she might turn over a new leaf and would not need to worry, and the store owner was indeed putting his efforts in, gambling for a turnaround with his child. However, Lake Rice was indeed somewhat expensive, and with that money she could buy several truckloads of other stuff. Thinking it over, she felt that although the store owner had his calculations, his intentions were good. She would first try the rice, and if it was good, she would come back. If it was just average, she would opt for more regular polished rice. So they set a delivery time, exchanged mobile numbers, and Su Shu left the grain wholesale market with Zaya. She couldn't arrange the shipment of 1,000 kilograms of polished rice in just a couple of days. While buying, Su Shu suddenly remembered where she would store so much stock. She urgently needed to find a storage warehouse, as she couldn't just bring it to her small house. So, she conveniently postponed the shipment for 2 days under the pretext of trying the lake rice before revisiting the other items. The boss also hoped that she would kickstart sales of Lake Rice this year, and he was all smiles about it. He also courteously mentioned that he needed 2 days to arrange the supply from the factory. With half of the grain issue resolved, Su Shu quickly found a warehouse the same day, paid the rent, and signed the contract. Thinking the contract would be useless in 2 months, Su Shu didn't take it too seriously and casually threw it in a drawer at home. With a warehouse in place, Su Shu felt no hesitation in placing more orders. She kept her computer in the kitchen, within easy reach, and scrolled through the options while cooking, ordering clothing and some tools she wanted last century but couldn't find. As for medication, she hadn't yet made a move. She was still contemplating ways to bulk buy common medications. All actions online are controlled by big data, and she didn't want to appear as if she had a ruinous, spendthrift death wish, attracting attention from relevant authorities. As for clothes, buying too many wasn't a concern. Why not buy extra and donate them if necessary? As the fragrance of food began to waft through the small apartment, the doorbell suddenly rang. Su Shu's head lifted from the screen, puzzled, wondering who it could be at this hour. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like the video and comment down if anything wrong in the story, and if have any suggestion to a new novel or want next part of any series, comment down. Our target is to get 1K subscriber. There will be SUPRISC for all of you. Stay tuned.